Okay, so a great place to start with motion graphics is with a bouncing ball. It's an exercise that most animators learn at the beginning of their studies. So I've created some artwork already, a sort of little soccer ball and a block of concrete. And we're just going to do an exercise where we bring in those simple layers from Photoshop and we apply keyframes to them to get you started animating in After Effects. So how do I import? I just go right click import and go here, or I could go Command I import, or I could go file import file, all the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to bouncing ball. There's my artwork. And I want to bring the artwork in as a composition to keep the layers that I've created. If I do this one, retain layer sizes, then my bounding box matches the size of the pixels on the layer. If I do the other one, just straight composition, the bounding box will be the same size as the entire artwork, which will make it a bit more difficult to manipulate. So I'm going to use this option, composition retain layer sizes. Bring it in. You'll get this second dialog, but just say okay to that. And then double click on the composition that you have just created. There it is. It's got a black background. I want to change that background to a color. So I go Command K or composition settings, Command K under the composition menu. And in here, I'm going to make sure I'm at 24 frames a second. It's a good frame rate to animate to. And my duration is 6 seconds and 0 frames. The size of the artwork is 1920 by 1080 pixels, the same as the one I created in Photoshop. And the background color is currently black, so I could change that to, some sort of blue. Happy with that. Now to animate this ball, I want to reduce the size of it probably, so I'm going to scale it down a bit. I'll use my move tool here. I can just grab the handles on that. If I just click and drag, I will distort that layer unless I hold the shift key. And then I'm going to open that layer. You can see it's named the same way I named it in Photoshop. I can open it up here, those little sideways arrows pointing to the right. Open that, you'll see another one with transform, open it again. And in here are the anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity settings. And we're going to put keyframes on them to get started bouncing this soccer ball around. I don't want a keyframe anchor point. I'll come back to that later. We'll edit the position of the anchor point on the concrete block. But for the soccer ball, I just want to leave the anchor point centered in the middle as it is. Anytime you want to move the anchor point, we just use this tool here. It's called the pan behind tool. And you can grab the anchor point and move it to another place. You can reposition it in the middle of your layer by double clicking on it with the command key, like that. And that will define the rotation and scale of this layer. So if I rotate now with my rotation tool, you'll see the soccer ball rotates around that anchor point. If I scale now, if I go to my scale settings, I'm just going to click and drag on that number there. It's going to scale, its scale will be defined from that anchor point. So I want to reposition that in the middle. I'm going to hold the command key and double click on the pan behind tool. And there it is. So let's put some keyframes on this soccer ball. I'm going to firstly keyframe position. I'm going to create a bounce. I want it to come out of the top of frame, bounce on the ground here, bounce into the air, bounce again there, and then hit the concrete block and bounce off it. So my first position, I want to be up here, out of frame, at the beginning of the shot. I'll put a keyframe there, say at that point in time, soccer ball should be out of frame. Move forward in time with the playhead down here, and then define the first bounce point. So if I click that playhead back and press the spacebar, it comes down. That's okay for now. I'm just going to do it roughly first, and then I'm going to refine the animation second. So So it comes down, hits that point, then it's going to bounce into the air again, come down again, and then hit this concrete block and ricochet into the air like that. Let's have a look at that. I'm going to use this work area bar now to, when I hit the space bar, I only want to play back that area. I don't want it to keep playing all this empty area here. So I'm just going to hit the space bar, it's going to bounce and do that. I'm going to hit the plus key and zoom in on the timeline a bit so I can just look at that area of the timeline. Now I'm going to refine this animation. For a start, it goes too slow and then fast. So I'm going to give those keyframes the same distance apart. Push them further. If I push them closer together, the ball will move faster. If I pull them further apart, the ball will go slower. So I've got that working. Don't mind the timing too much, but the motion path is all wrong. It's got a weird curves at the bottom of the bounce here. I want sharp bounce curves. So I'm going to use this tool. If I go into the pen tool submenu here, I've got the convert vertex tool. Same as in Photoshop and Illustrator, I'm going to turn the curves off on that bounce there and on that bounce there. And on the top of the bounce, I'm going to add more curve. And at this one too, I'm going to add more curve. I'm going to also turn the curves off there for now. Oops. And now I'm going to go back to my move tool and edit the position of those keyframes to get exactly what I want. I'll play around with them a little bit and get a nicer feeling. And this will be the first step. Okay, that's the first step of my bounce. It's got a long way to go, but at least I've got a curve arm that feels right. I can keep tweaking it and playing with it. I can keep playing with the distance between the keyframes down here. But that's a good first step to get to. Editing your motion path in time down here and in position up here.